My name is Pratt. I'm a freshman at the University of California, Merced, but I hail from the quiet, rolling hills of western Pennsylvania, a place where quaintness reigns supreme. A place which wasn't much different than where I went to school. I made a choice to move all the way across the country for college. Merced, California wasn't exactly my dream destination, but it had one thing going for it that sealed the deal for me. It was new. Like really new. And by new, I mean no history. And trust me, I hate history. History has this way of dragging you back into the past, shackling you to events you had no hand in, yet are somehow supposed to feel responsible for. It's suffocating, like being buried alive under the weight of other people's mistakes and triumphs. So yeah, when I saw the school was almost a blank slate, I jumped at the chance to carve out my own story, free from the burdens of the past. No place is devoid of all history. There have been generations of people everywhere you look, but some places hit harder than others. And this was a light place. But even as I tried to escape history's grasp, there was something else I kept hidden away in the closet. I'm talking about the metaphorical closet, the one where you hide the parts of yourself you're not quite ready to share with the world. The part of me who liked guys instead of girls, this part was still safely tucked away, shielded from prying eyes and judgmental whispers. I wasn't ashamed of who I was, but I was afraid. Anytime I ever showed this part of me, it was met with fear, rejection, and alienation. In a small town like the one I grew up in, different isn't exactly celebrated. I learned early to keep my secrets buried so deep that sometimes I'd even forget about them. A few weeks into school, I felt a flicker of hope, a spark of possibility that maybe I wouldn't have to face it alone. His name is Martin. He's from the Philippines but grew up in Boston. We met in this history refresher class of all places. Neither of us seemed particularly interested in the subject, which was a relief. His smile was the first part of him I noticed. Then it's not so much how I saw him as it was how he looked at me, with eyes which saw through the BS, and directly to who I was, and the way he spoke, with a slight Boston accent and infectious laugh. I thought he was tailor-made to disrupt my carefully constructed walls. I couldn't help my draw to him. I didn't want to help it, even if he scared me as much as he excited me. He was out and proud, unafraid to show the world who he was. And part of me envied him, wished I were more like him. The other part of me raged just as hard, and I made it a point not to think about him too much before I had to stand or walk anywhere. I knew to be incredibly careful when I felt this happy. I knew to be skeptical of this kind of attention. But there I was, caught with that feeling. We couldn't be more different. He was the outgoing city boy who knew who he was. I was only another introverted small-town kid still trying to find his place. But we fit together well. I was sure I looked ridiculous to anyone passing by, but I couldn't help but grin as I made my way across campus to meet him. Every step felt light, every breath sweet, the closer I came to being in his company again. There was a spring in my step I'd be embarrassed for anyone back home to see. And that's when I realized for the first time I didn't care as much as I used to. For the first time, I questioned why I went so far out of my way to please the people back home, even if it meant destroying my own happiness. My chest fluttered as I thought about how far I had come in such a short time. When we first met, his attention scared me until it became expected. Then wanted, until it was needed. What warmed me the most was the idea which formed inside of me that maybe I made him feel the same way. Maybe, somehow, someway, I made him feel a small part of the way he made me feel. We spent all our free time together, which was a lot for two unambitious students who only wanted to coast through the next 4 years as effortlessly as possible while still ending up with some kind of degree. We spent so much time in constant conversation, I could almost hear his questions and thoughtful answers even when he wasn't around. No subject was untouched. There's nothing we didn't share with each other. I didn't think I ever cared if I found someone to be with. I wasn't a lonely teenager, although I spent those years alone. I didn't feel incomplete. Never searched for this strange idea of another half. Never needed a soulmate. I was entirely satisfied with a healthy supply of lotion and never fully bored with the world around me. I never knew how quickly I'd set it all aside. How quickly I became someone who always wanted to be near him. But as I approached the commons, my heart sank at the sight which greeted me. There was Martin, sitting with another guy close to him. The man sat sideways on the bench with his legs on either side. He faced Martin in a way which was a little too comfortable for some casual stranger. Someone closer to his mid-20s. Even while sitting, I could see he was tall and ruggedly handsome. Worst was he displayed more confidence in a second than I could muster in an entire day. Martin smiled while the guy laughed and leaned toward him in a way which only told of sexual attraction. More so than anger, than betrayal, than hurt, I felt like I was intruding on something sacred, an intimate place I didn't belong. The familiar humiliation crawled up my shoulders when I felt stupid for believing I could ignite passion in anyone. I know, insanely melodramatic. But when jealousy reared its ugly head and twisted my insides, I couldn't help it. I know I shouldn't have jumped to conclusions, shouldn't have let my insecurities get the best of me. But it's exactly what I did. With a heavy heart, I retreated toward my dorm before they had a chance to see me. I told myself it was never a big deal. I was overreacting to the whole situation. But I knew the truth. I was scared. I was losing the only person who's managed to crack through my defenses. I was about to be left behind once again. I didn't want this to be a cycle I lived over and over every time I felt a real connection to someone. As I collapsed onto my bed, the weight of my emotions threatened to crush me. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, the nagging question of why I wasn't enough for anyone. The next day dawned gray and heavy, mirroring the storm raging within me. I couldn't face him, not after what I saw, and not after fully understanding our entire fight was only going on inside my head. So I did the only thing I could think of. The best thing any grown adult would do. Any man would do. I avoided him. I ducked my head as I slipped into our history class. Hoped he wouldn't notice me, though I know he did, as I sat on the other side of the room as him. And when class was dismissed, I bolted before he could catch up to me. I hated how dramatic I was being, how I let my insecurities get the best of me. But I couldn't bring myself to have this conversation, to confront the tangled mess of emotions swirling inside me. I didn't want to make my feelings real, didn't want to validate them in any way. So I hid. Retreated into the safety of my dorm room during the free time we used to spend together. Alone in the silence of my room, the weight of my loneliness pressed down on me like a suffocating blanket. I wasn't dealing with it well at all. I couldn't even tell if it set off an imbalance in me. No person should be this broken over someone they hadn't even kissed. But who could I turn to? My parents would never understand, and the few people I acquainted with growing up were already as estranged to me as I was becoming to myself. I thought I could hide forever. I avoided him and the mess of emotions he stirred within me. But eventually, like all things in life, reality came crashing down around me. It happened one evening as I was heading back from the library, lost in my own thoughts. I was heading out through the door in which he was heading in. At first, I moved to walk around him, but he blocked my path with a determined look. I couldn't bring myself to disrespect him any further, so I looked him straight in his dark black eyes. "Pratt," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "Why are you avoiding me?" I wanted to run, to flee from this conversation before it could even begin. But one look at him and I knew I didn't want to keep hiding forever. So I squared my emotions and met his gaze head on. Nothing could have prepared me for the words that tumbled from my lips in a rush of raw honesty. "I don't want to be jealous, but I am," I blurted out, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "Because I like you. Because I'm gay." For a moment, panic seized me. A cold grip squeezed my heart as I realized what I admitted. But his response caught me off guard. His expression softened with understanding rather than judgment. "What or who are you jealous of?" he asked quietly, his eyes searching mine for answers. I hesitated, the weight of my words settling heavy between us. But there was no turning back now, no hiding from the truth any longer. "That guy I saw you with the other day," I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. "He was obviously into you and you didn't seem to mind it. Look, I sound so stupid right now. This isn't my place. I'm sorry." Without pause, I turned and walked away, the sting of tears burning behind my eyes. If this was what coming out was going to be like, then I wanted no part in it. I'd rather stay hidden in the shadows, safe from the harsh light of truth. Was this how it was going to end between us? In silence and misunderstanding, with words left unsaid and hearts left broken. I couldn't help but think I let my fear get the best of me once again. And this time, I wasn't sure if I would ever be able to find my way back to the light. A few days later, the skies were clear, and so were my thoughts. The park near campus was bathed in the golden hues of autumn, the sparse trees adorned with leaves beginning to change. But despite the picturesque scene before me, all I could feel was a deep sense of homesickness. These trees were nothing like the blanket of bright red, orange, and yellow back home. College wasn't what I expected, and I missed the places I knew. Even the familiar haunts I'd find there. I missed them too. Barely 2 months into college, and already I felt like I failed. Lost in my thoughts, I barely noticed Martin until he was standing right in front of me, a look of surprise mirrored on his face. We exchanged awkward greetings, the silence stretching between us like an unspoken barrier. "I miss you being around," he said, breaking the uneasy stillness. I nodded, unable to find the words to express the turmoil raging inside me. He didn't press, didn't pry, but I could see the concern etched in his eyes. "I didn't think you would see me talking to that guy." His voice was hesitant. His hand scratched at the back of his head. It made me nervous to see him like this. This person who defined bravery in his sleep stood so scared. I hadn't seen this part of him before. "It's fine," I nodded. My throat was constricted with a myriad of conflicting emotions. "It's not my place to tell you who you can see. You're allowed to do whatever you want. I thought, never mind. It's cool. We're cool." Though I was the one who stumbled through my words, he is the one who shut his eyes tight, as if he were doing something wrong. "I'm sorry," he said, his words rushed and desperate. I know this sounds like a lame excuse, but it wasn't what it looked like. "It's cool, you don't have to explain," I started, but he cut me off. "Listen to me, please," he implored, and I couldn't help but comply. "First, before anything else, I need you to know that I like you," he confessed, his words hanging heavy in the air between us. "I know it's about to get really complicated, but I like you. Only you." Part of me felt dumb for not trusting him, for letting my insecurities cloud my judgment for so many days. But another part couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this wasn't real. People never approached me with kindness without expecting an immediate return for their attentiveness to my emotions. Still, when he asked if we could walk together, I found myself nodding once again. And as we strolled through the park, the tension between us slowly melted away. We engaged in casual conversation, the easy banter between us a welcome respite from the weight of the world. And when he asked how it felt to finally tell someone I was gay, even if it was just him, I couldn't help but smile. "It was amazing," I admitted, my heart swelled with gratitude. "Especially because it was you." But then, as I was starting to let my guard down, he stopped me from walking, his hand lightly grasping my wrist. "I can't go any further," he said, his voice grave. "I have to ask, and if I don't say anything now, I never will. I've gone back and forth for days. And I don't know how to say this because I never said it to anyone before, because it's like putting this huge part of me out there that I never wanted to. But I know you can see." He didn't continue. I stared at him, hoping this hysterical outburst would go away as quickly as it came. He took a deep breath. "Dead people. You can see them." He looked down. I pulled my wrist from his grasp, dismissing his questions as crazy, but he wouldn't stop pushing the issue. With each step I took to distance myself, he doggedly pursued, his insistence cutting through the crisp autumn air like a knife. "Stop, this is insane," I muttered, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and frustration. In an instant, I didn't know what I should see when I looked at him. I know what I wanted to see, but that wasn't the same as what I should see. He ignored my reaction. My attempt at confusion. Still, he persisted. his words tumbling out in a frantic stream as if he couldn't hold them back any longer. And when I could bear it no more and tried to walk away, he stopped, but not before delivering a bombshell that left me reeling. "Dexter is dead!" he called out, his voice echoing through the empty park. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest as I turned to face him. "Who is Dexter?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "The guy you saw me talking to," he replied, his tone oddly detached. "He died in a car crash." "Oh," I swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking in. "I'm sorry." But he wasn't sad, wasn't grieving the loss of his friend. In fact, he was the opposite, his expression bordering on relief. And suddenly, everything clicked into place and I knew what this would mean. He continued, "Dex died in 1978. Car crash. Less than half a mile from here." I felt the blood drain from my face as his words washed over me, a cold dread settling in the pit of my stomach. My eyes shut so tight, but still a single tear was able to fall from them. "How do you know all this?" I whispered, my voice barely audible above the rustle of the leaves. "Because you and me, we're a lot alike," he confessed, his gaze steady. "You came all the way out here for the same reason I did, and no, not only the gay thing. A new place equals less history. Less history equals less dead people. Less dead people means less problems. I see them too. And I guess I came here for that same kind of peace you're looking for." My head rolled in his direction, but I let him continue. Ever since I can remember," he said, then looked at me. "You're not alone." I relaxed slightly, the pieces of the puzzle slotting together with a sickening sense of inevitability. And when he reached out to hold my shoulder, a gesture so simple yet so profound, his touch warmed my skin. There was something else there too, a sense of acceptance that I didn't know I was craving until then. Slowly, tentatively, I allowed myself to lean into his touch, to let him guide me through the storm raging inside me. And when he hooked his arm in mine, I didn't pull away. Instead, I allowed myself to be led around the park once more, the tension in my muscles slowly easing with each step. The autumn sunset was something closer to both our homes and not the California we usually imagined in our heads. The validation I found in him was unexpected, but I was excited to see where this newfound connection would take me. And as we slipped back into our casual walk side by side, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope stirring within me. A man escorting a woman past us and couldn't stop staring. This caused Martin to nod hello and they scoffed at us. I held Martin's arm tighter, and this act offended them enough to walk faster. "You think it's because I'm Asian?" Martin asked. I smiled. "Maybe it's because we're both guys." He laughed. "Or maybe the fact they've both been dead for over a century and still aren't over the Garfield assassination." "Yeah, different time," I said. "Yeah," he said. "Also, her corset is super tight and she's just mad because her guy has waxed mutton chops that he probably only washes once a month. And mine has the nicest hair." He reached up to run his fingers along the side of my head. A sensation I never imagined could be so overwhelming. Right there in the chilly park with the sky ablaze of a half-rainbow sunset, I kissed him with a swell of passion I didn't know I had in me. Well, okay, the park was empty, so it wasn't the bravest thing ever, and I was sure no one saw it except some homophobic ghouls, but this was a big leap, and his smile made it impossible to feel any regret. And yeah, he was right. I wasn't alone.